Hello there. I'm Chaos Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the first inhabitants to colonize China were black. Strap yourselves in. This is going to get a little kinky. Now, with all things, everything, I implore you to please do your own research, as you may be surprised at what you discover about the world and yourself. So, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, now this article was published July 12th, 2016, written by Jane Q. How China is Rewriting the Book on Human Origins. Fossil finds in China are challenging ideas about the evolution of modern humans and our closest relatives. Here we have an image of the reconstructed skull of the Peking man, the fossil that launched discussion on human origins in China. On the outskirts of Beijing, a small limestone mountain named Dragon Bone Hill rises above the surrounding sprawl. Along the northern side, a path leads up to some fenced off caves that draw 150,000 visitors each year, from school children to gray haired pensioners, retirees. It was here in 1929 that researchers discovered a nearly complete ancient skull that they determined was roughly half a million years old, dubbed Peking Man. It was among the earliest human remains ever uncovered, and it helped to convince many researchers that humanity first evolved in Asia. Since then, the central importance of the Peking Man has faded, although modern dating methods put the fossil nearly earlier up to 780,000 years old. The specimen has been eclipsed by discoveries in Africa that have yielded much older remains of ancient human relatives. Such finds have cemented Africa's status as the cradle of humanity, the place from which modern humans and their predecessors spread around the globe, and regulated Asia to a kind of evolutionary cul de sac. But the telling of the Peking Man has haunted generations of Chinese researchers who have struggled to understand its relationship to modern humans. It's a story without an ending, says Wu Zhizi, a paleontologist at the Chinese Academy of Science Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology in Beijing. They have wondered whether the descendants of the Peking man and fellow members of the Homo of the species Homo erectus died out or evolved into a more modern species, and whether they contributed to the gene pool of China today. Keen to the Keen to get to the bottom of its people's ancestry, China has in the past decade stepped up its efforts to uncover evidence of early humans across the country. It is reanalyzing old fossil finds and pouring tens of millions of dollars a year into excavations. And the government is setting up a 1.1 million laboratory at the IVPP to extract and sequence ancient DNA. The investment comes at a time when paleoanthropologists across the globe are starting to pay more attention to Asian fossils and how they relate to other early hominins, creatures that are more closely related to humans than chimps. Finds in China and other parts of Asia have made it clear that dazzling variety of Homo species have once roamed the continent, and they are challenging conventional ideas about the evolutionary history of humanity. Quote, many Western scientists tend to see Asian fossils and artifacts through the prism of what was happening in Africa and Europe, says Wu. Those other continents have historically drawn more attention in studies of human evolution because of the antiquity of fossil finds there and because they are closer to major paleoanthropology research institutions, he says. But it's increasingly clear that many Asian materials cannot fit into the traditional narrative of human evolution. End quote. Chris Stringer, a paleoanthropologist at the National History Museum in London, agrees. Quote, Asia has been a forgotten continent. He says, quote, its a role in human evolution may have been largely underappreciated. End quote. Evolving story. In its typical form, the story of Homo sapiens starts in Africa. The exact details vary from one telling to another, but the key characteristics and events generally maintain the same, and the title is always out of Africa. In this standard view of human evolution, Homo erectus first evolved there more than 2 million years ago. Then, sometime before 600,000 years ago, it gave rise to a new species, Homo heidelbergensis, the oldest remains of which have been found in Ethiopia. About 400,000 years ago, some members of Homo heidelbergensis left Africa and split into two branches. One ventured into the Middle East and Europe, where it evolved into Neanderthals. The other went east, where its members became Denisovans, a group first discovered in Siberia in 2010. Now, I did do a live stream on the Denisovans. Uh, they're a very fascinating species. And I'm not going to get off topic, but I'll just say this. They were incredibly advanced in their jewelry making skills. Yeah, they were, you know, quote unquote ooga boogas, but they were ooga boogas with some skills and hell of a fashion sense. So I highly recommend you take a deep dive into that species and start with my live stream. Let's continue. No, here we go. The remaining population of Homo heidelbergensis in Africa eventually evolved into our own species, Homo sapiens, about 200,000 years ago. Then these early humans expanded their range to Eurasia 60,000 years ago, where they replaced local hominins with a minuscule amount of interbreeding. And here we have a map pointing out the two routes for human evolution. I'll give you guys a quick minute while I take a sip to take a peek at that map. Now you see we have the two different, we have the out of Africa route that most anthropologists agree upon, and then we have the alternate model. Just something to keep into mind when you do your own studies. Let's continue. A hallmark of Heidelbergensis, the potential common ancestor of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans, is that individuals have a mixture of primitive and modern features, like a more archaic lineages. Homo heidelbergensis has a massive brow ridge and no chin. I think we still got a couple of those Homo heidelbergenises running around in the UK and throughout the United States. I think we've all met a no chin before. So the next time you meet someone with no chin and they talking smack, just tell them, bro, you're nothing more than a Homo heidelbergensis. Oh yeah, that will definitely oh, that'd be a really good diss right there. Give them a little bit of that paleontologist smack and smack talk. Smack and talk. All right, let's get back to it. I'm over here acting like a ooga booga. But it also resembles Homo sapiens, which its smaller teeth and bigger brain case. Most researchers have viewed Homo heidelbergensis or something similar as a transitional form between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. Unfortunately, fossil evidence from this period, the dawn of the human race, is scarce and often ambiguous. It is the least understood episode in human evolution, says Russell Seichon, a paleoanthropologist at the University of Iowa in Iowa City, but is essential to our understanding of humanity's ultimate origin. End quote. The tale is further muddled by Chinese fossils analyzed over the past 4 decades, which cast doubt over the lineage progression from Africa Homo erectus to modern humans. They show that between roughly 900,000 and 125,000 years ago, East Asia was teeming with hominins endowed with features that would place them somewhere between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens, says Wu. See ancient human sites. And here we have a map of mainland China pointing out where various ancient sites are located, where the in between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens may have been prolific. Uh, these fossils are a big mystery, says Saichen. They clearly represent more advanced species than Homo erectus, but nobody knows what they are because they don't seem to fit into any categories we know. Well, if that's the case, then just accept the fact that it's just a different branch off of human species. This is one thing that I have continuously have emphasized in previous videos I did when we discussed the giants and various human species that existed during the previous resets of our civilization, that there were more than likely survivors. And here they're saying we don't. They were clearly more advanced, but we just don't know what they fit into any categories that we know. Well, because that would mean that they're just a separate species from humans. You want to categorize them between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens, fine, but clearly there's more to it than either we're being misled or they're not aware of. And I would not be surprised if there is compartmentalization within anthropology and paleoanthropology communities, especially when it comes to the origins of humanity and civilizations. It, you know, it, like I said, when it comes to the Denisovans and Siberia is kind of close there, things start getting really fishy. Uh, so I just think that they're just a completely separate species, and either they don't want to admit that, or there's information that we aren't privy to, or they just don't they just don't effing know yet. But I think it's the latter, personally. Let's continue. The fossil transitional characteristics have prompted researchers such as Stringer to lump them with Homo heidelbergensis because the oldest of these forms, two skulls uncovered in Yonjian in Hubei province, date back 900,000 years. Stringer even suggests that Homo heidelbergensis might have originated in Asia and then spread to other continents. Now, we did cover this in a previous live stream, no, in a previous episode of Lounge Ronin. Um, I think not last week, but the week before last, we covered it. So feel free to check out that video if you want to know more about the Hubei province, because we delve into a scientific paper. Let's continue. But many researchers, including most Chinese paleontologists, contend that the materials from China are different from European and African Homoeogenesis fossils, despite some apparent similarities. One nearly complete skull unearthed at the Dali in Jiangxi province, dated 250,000 years ago, has a bigger brain case, a shorter face, and a lower cheekbone than most Homo heidelbergensis specimens, suggesting that the species was more advanced. Such transitional forms persisted for hundreds of thousands of years in China until species appeared with such modern traits that some researchers have classified them as Homo sapiens. One of the most recent of these, represented by two teeth and a lower jawbone, dating to about 100,000 years ago, unearthed in 2007 by IVPP paleoanthropologist Li Wu and his colleagues. Discovered in the Zerendong, a cave in the Guangxi province, the jaw has a classic modern human appearance, but retains some archaic features of Peking man, such as more of a robust build and less protruding chin. Most Chinese paleontologists and a few adherent supporters from the West think that the transitional fossils are evidence that Peking man was an ancestor of modern Asian people. In this model, known as Maltior regionalism or continuity of hybridization, hominins descended from Homo erectus in Asia, interbred with incoming groups from Africa and other parts of Eurasia, and their progeny gave rise to the ancestors of modern East Asia, says Wu. Support for this idea also comes from artifacts in China. In Europe and Africa, stone tools change markedly over time, but hominins in China use the same type of simple stone instruments from about 1.7 million years ago to 10,000 years ago. According to Guo Xing, an archaeologist at the IVPP, this suggests that local hominins evolved continuously with little influence from outside populations. Politics at play. Some Western researchers suggest that there is a hint of nationalism in China, paleoanthropologists support for continuity. Quote, the Chinese, they do not accept the idea of Homo sapiens evolved in Africa, says one researcher. They want everything to come from China. And that I could completely understand. They are very, very nationalistic people, and they don't like blacks and Africans. Well, in fact, they don't really like any other race other than theirs. And I'm talking about the Chinese people of the country of China, not the Americans or anything like that, but more in line with the government, I should say. But also the Chinese people. They're not the biggest fans of black people. You've seen plenty of videos of black people in China and all the shit they be dealing with. So I can definitely see that. And we do know that China is prone to lying, often to use it as a PR stunt for the government, never really for the people. But let's continue. Chinese researchers reject such allegations. This has nothing to do with nationalism, says Wu. It's all about the evidence. The transitional fossils and archaeological artifacts, he says. Everything points to continuous evolution in China from Homo erectus to modern humans. End quote. Oh, Wu, he's laying it on thick today, bro. But the continuity with hybridization model is countered by overwhelming genetic data that point to Africa as the wellspring of modern humans. Studies of Chinese populations show that 97.4% of their genetic makeup is from ancestral modern humans from Africa, with the rest coming from an extinct form such as Neanderthals and Denisovans. Quote, if there had been any significant contributions from Chinese Homo erectus, they would show up in the genetic data, says Li Hui, a population geneticist at the Fudang University in Shanghai. Wu counters that the genetic contribution from the archaic hominins in China could have been missed because no DNA has yet been recovered from them. Many researchers say that there are ways to explain the existing Asian fossils without resorting to continuity with hybridization. The Zerendong hominins, for instance, could represent an exodus of early humans from Africa between 120,000 to 80,000 years ago, instead of remaining on the Levant in the Middle East. As was thought previously, these people could have expanded into East Asia, says Michael Petrogalia, an archaeologist at the University of Oxford, UK. I think that could also be more in line, in my opinion. Other evidence backs up this hypothesis. Excavation of the cave in Daojin in China's human province have yielded 47 fossil teeth so modern looking that they could have come from the mouths of people today. But the fossils are at least 80,000 years old and perhaps 120,000 years old. Lue and his colleagues reported last year, quote, those early migrants may have interbred with archaic populations along the way or in Asia, which could explain Zirandong people's primitive traits, says Petrogalia. And here we have an image of the teeth. It almost sounds like Wu is so hell bent on it being from China that he's unwilling to look at other things, but that's just my personal opinion. Another possibility is that some of the Chinese fossils, including the Dali skull, represent the mysterious Denisovans. a species identified from Siberian fossils that are more than 40,000 years old. Paleontologists don't know what the Denisovans looked like, but studies of DNA recovered from their teeth and bones indicate that the ancient population contributed to the genomes of modern humans, especially Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guineans, and Polynesians, suggesting that the Denisovans might have roamed Asia. Maria Montrion Torres, a paleoanthropologist at the University College London, is among those who proposed that some of the Chinese hominins were Denisovans. She worked with IVPP researchers on an analysis published last year of a fossil assemblage uncovered at the Zhijiao in Hubei province, including partial jaws and 19th dated to 125,000 years to 100,000 years ago. The molar teeth are massive, with very robust roots and a complex grooves reminiscent of those from Denisovans, she says. A third idea is even more radical. It emerged when the Matrinion Torres and her colleagues compared more than 5,000 fossil teeth from around the world. The team found that the Eurasian specimens are more similar to each other than the African ones. That work and more recent interpretations of fossil skulls suggest that the Eurasian hominins evolved separately from African ones for a long stretch of time. The researchers proposed that the first hominins that left Africa 1.8 million years ago were the eventual source of modern humans. Their descendants mostly settled in the Middle East, where the climate was favorable, and then produced waves of transitional hominins that spread elsewhere. One Eurasian group went to Indonesia, another gave rise to Neanderthals and Denisovans, and a third ventured back into Africa and evolved into Homo sapiens, which later spread throughout the world. In this model, modern humans evolved in Africa, but their immediate ancestral originated in the Middle East. Not everybody is convinced. The fossil interpretations are notoriously problematic, says Savant Pablo, a paleogeneticist at the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany. But DNA from Eurasian fossils dating to the start of the human race could help to reveal which story or combination is correct. China is now making a push in that direction. Kwame Fu, a paleogeneticist who did her PhD with Pabo, returned home last year to establish a lab to extract the sequenced ancient DNA at IVPP. One of her immediate goals is to see whether some of the Chinese fossils belong to mysterious Denisovan group. Ooh, excuse me, I apologize. The prominent molar teeth from Zhu Zhaoyou will be an early target. I think we have a prime suspect here, she says. Fuzzy picture. Despite the different interpretations of the Chinese fossil record, everybody agrees that the evolutionary tale in Asia is much more interesting than people appreciated before. But the details remain fuzzy because of so few researchers have excavated in Asia. Well, I mean, you can thank China's national government for that. I mean, there are pyramids in China, but they're not allowing anyone to touch those. So what do you expect? When they have the results, they have been startling. In 2003, a dig on Flores Island in Indonesia turned up the diminutive hominin, which researchers named Homo floresianus and dubbed the Hobbit, which is with its with its odd assortment of features. The creature still provokes debate about whether it's a dwarfed from Hominum erectus or some primitive lineage that made it all the way from Africa to Southeast Asia and lived until as recently as 60,000 years ago. Last month, more surprises emerged from Flores, where researchers found the remains of hobbit-like hominin in rocks about 700,000 years ago, 700,000 years old. Recovering more fossils from all parts of Asia will clearly help to fill the gaps. Many paleoanthropologists also call for better access to existing materials. Most Chinese fossils, including some of the finest specimens such as Yonzhang and Dali skulls, are accessible only to a handful of Chinese paleontologists and their collaborators. To make them available for general studies with replicas or CT scans would be fantastic, says Stringer. Moreover, fossil sites should be dated much more rigorously, preferable by multiple methods, researchers say. But all agree that Asia, the largest continent on Earth, has a lot more to offer in terms of unraveling the human story. The center of gravity, says Petrogalia, is shifting eastwards. So, in terms of the genetic lineages of humanity, um, China is definitely an interesting place to look into. So if you're into that kind of stuff, hey, I highly recommend this is your first breadcrumb and follow it to its destination. Now let's get to Article 2. Things are going to get a little more kinky. So prep yourself. This might be triggering to some. DNA evidence. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. This article was written December 27th, 2013 by Culture Critic. Interesting name. DNA evidence proves first people in China were blacks. Here we have a photo to the left. China is apparently finding out now that black historians have been reporting for many years. The first inhabitants of China were, in fact, black. H. Imbert, a French anthropologist, said in his book Les Negritos de la Chine, the Negroid race, quote, the Negroid races peopled at some time all the south of India, Indochina, and China. The south of the Indochina actually has now pure Negritos as the Semangs and mixed as the Malas and the Sakais. End quote. Another author and professor, Chang Hasing Lang, revealed similar information in writing, quote, the importation of Negro slaves to China under the Tang Dynasty. I want to repeat that real quick. The importation of Negro slaves to China under the Tang Dynasty, even the sacred Manchu dynasty shows this Negro strain. The lower part of the face of Emperor Puyi of Manchukuo, direct descendant of Manchu rulers of China, is most distinctly Negroid. Yo, we was emperors in China. Let's continue. These professors, through their research and studies, have reason to believe that Negroid emperor actually existed at the dawn of the country's history, citing evidence of substantial populations of blacks in early China, including finding reports of a major kingdom ruled by blacks being frequently mentioned in historical Chinese history documents. And Chinese uh, chroniclers report that a Negro empire existed in the south of China at the dawn of the country's empire. I gotta repeat that again for those in the professors, through their research and studies, have reasons to believe that a Negroid empire actually existed at the dawn of the country's history, citing evidence of substantial populations of blacks in early China, including finding reports of a major kingdom ruled by blacks frequently mentioned in historical Chinese history documents. And Chinese chroniclers report that a Negro empire existed in the south of China at the dawn of the country's history. Oh my sweet baby Jesus. The notion that blacks were the original inhabitants of China has been thwarted by white scientists and even some blacks as a result of sweeping message of white superiority and inferiority of black Africans and their descendants spreading worldwide. In 2005, DNA testing proved that the first inhabitants of China were black Africans. In 2005, DNA testing proved the first inhabitants of China were black Africans. The study was conducted by a Chinese DNA specialist named Jin Li and a team of Chinese and other scientists. Lee admits that he wasn't trying to prove this fact and said he initially wanted to prove that the Chinese evolved from Homo erectus independently of all humans. After collecting more than 1,200 DNA samples from 165 different ethnic groups, Lee and his team found that early humans belonged to different species, but modern humans had descended from East African species. Like I said, I covered this in an earlier video. Check like earlier, check at the beginning of August for that video. I can't remember the name. I apologize. One scientist on the team, Lu Hui, said that 100,000 years ago, humans began migrating through South and Southeast Asia into China from Africa. Their testing showed that 65 branches of Chinese all carry similar DNA mutations as the people of Southeast Asia. Another scientist on the team, Jin Li, had this to say about their findings. Quote, "We did not see even one single individual that could be considered a descendant of Homo erectus in China. Rather, everybody was descended of our ancestors from Africa." I'm going to repeat that for those in the back. Quote, "We did not see even one single individual that could be considered as a descendant of Homo erectus in China. Rather, everybody was a descendant of our ancestors from Africa." When asked how he felt about these findings, he responded, quote, "After I saw the evidence generated in my laboratory, I think we should all be happy with that because, after all, modern humans from different parts of the world are not so different from each other, and we are all very close relatives." End quote. The team of scientists participating in the 5-year study of the geographic and genealogical routes tracing the spread of settlements of ancient and modern humans were from China, Russia, India, Brazil, and other nations. Richard Leakey, a well known Kenya born paleoanthropologist who has dedicated his life to studying fossils and the past, believes that we must study the past if we are to have a future. He had this to say, quote, "If you get to the stage where you can persuade people on the evidence that it's solid that we are all that we are all African, that color is superficial, that stages of development of culture are all interactive, then I think we have a chance of a world that will respond better to global challenges." End quote. Wow. So it appears that Africa truly is the cradle of all civilization, after all. Alrighty, let's head to Article 2. Revealing photo. Okay, this article was written by Fradia Dawkins, April 14th, 2018. Revealing photos prove existence of black people in ancient China. Here we go. We have two images. A hospital room in Fuzhou, smiling left, smiling boy in tattered rags right, composite of American Red Cross 1919, Library of Congress, Ragged Kid in Cost Village by Sidney D. Gamble, 1917 and 1918. Yo, this boy on the right, you slap some dreads on him, you got yourself kind Sanat. No lie. You strap some dreads on this boy right here on the right with the rags on, and you got Kai Sanat playing Skyrim. Let's continue. Ooh. Apologies. All right, let's get into this article. Afro Asians may seem like a foreign concept. Nevertheless, it is a worthwhile notion to process. In present day, the Black Asian population is on the rise. This is due to growing concentration of Africans in provinces of China such as Nanjing, Hangzhou, and Shanghai. Nigerians have immigrated to attend a school or gain employment prospects. Let us step back for a bit, though. Here we go. The Qing dynasty, which ruled in China from 1644 to 1912, included an array of individuals with unique cultures. Here we have the Machu ladies. Remember we just covered the Machu, the emperor, and that he was black. China's first emperor was a black man. This I want everyone to keep that in mind. Blacks also lived in Peinyuting region of China's Bedai district and Jihuangdo, which is 200 miles east of the capital of China, Beijing. Documentation obtained in 1869 in Peking, now known as Beijing, exhibits the existence of blacks. Some were assimilated in a comfortable capacity while others were relegated to servant roles. Now remember, the Quang dynasty imported black slaves. Man. Blacks also inhabited the Tonkin region, located on northern Vietnam bordered with the Quang province in China. In the book Where China Meets India, black southern barbarians were referred to as Wu Man. In the book Where China Meets India, black southern barbarians were referred to as Wu Man. Here we have a hospital room in Fu Chao, author American Red Cross, 1919. And there we have some black Chinese people. Here we have some more. Look at this brother. Look at this cat right here. Not this guy in the front, but the guy right behind him. These are brothers right here. These are all brothers. Look at that. In 1902, men who took part in the Boxer Rebellion, they were called dark-skinned and vicious by author James Rickleton. Okay, so now we have to completely recontextualize and relook at the Boxer Rebellion in a different light because now, oh my gosh, bro, this is mind-blowing. Whew, let's continue. Photographer James Rickleton recalled in his 1902 book, The Boxer Uprising, this is truly a dusky and unattractive brood. One would scarcely expect to find natives of Borneo or Fiji Islands more barbarous in appearance, and it is well known that a great proportion of the Boxer organization is of this sort. Indeed, how dark skinned, how ill clad, how lacking in intelligence, how dull, morose, miserable, and vicious they appear. End quote. Now tell us how you really feel, James Wickleton. Ah, damn. So now I'm wondering, was the Boxer Rebellion a rebellion of dark-skinned Africans, dark-skinned Chinese, black-skinned Chinese that were treated unfairly? We have to now look at the whole Boxer Rebellion in a different mindset. Holy smokes. The ancestors of those that lived in the aforementioned provinces eventually spanned out and now also reside in the islands of the South Pacific. Read more on the influence of Africans all over the world. Read about the Afro Iranians, the Afro Turks, and the Afro Peruvians. Oh man, the Peruvians, they're going to be talking about um, Mansa al Abubakari, who we addressed, and his colonization of the Americas. But there you have it. The first inhabitants to colonize China were black. And now I'm going to further blow your minds. And I'm going to end it off with a video. Drop yourselves in for this one. Your boy Ronin, he's getting better. He's getting better at his research and bringing the receipts. Here we go.
This is where the Asians get the concept of lions at the temples, at the entrance of the temples, as protectors. And then they created a great lions dance in China, but they don't have no lions there. The Shang Dynasty 1 and 2 was done by the Kushites. So the same people who seeded Kemet seeded China, Asia, Japan that way, all along the side. And so you see, China, the most sacred dance at New Year's is the Lions Dance. I was one of the first black people to ever do the Lions Dance in Chinatown. Talk about it. In the 1971, 72. And the Asians were mad.
I know they were.
They were mad, you know. In fact, they didn't know I was an Asian because you got the stuff on until we got to the end. And it was, I'm like, it's too late. You already cashed the check.
Let's play that one more time.
This is where the Asians get the concept of lions at the temples, at the entrance of the temples, as protectors. And then they created a great lions dance in China, but they don't have no lions there. The Shang Dynasty 1 and 2 was done by the Kushites. So the same people who seeded Kemet seeded China, Asia, Japan that way, all along the side. And so you see, China, the most sacred dance at New Year's is the Lions Dance. I was one of the first black people to ever do the Lions Dance in Chinatown. Talk about it. In the 1971, 72. And the Asians were mad.
I know they were.
They were mad, you know. In fact, they didn't know I was an Asian because you got the stuff on until we got to the end. And it was, I'm like, it's too late. You already cashed the check. This is where the Asians get the concept of lions at the temples, at the entrance of the temples, as protectors. And then they created a great lions dance in China, but they don't have no lions there. The Shang Dynasty 1 and 2 was done by the Kushites. So the same people who seeded Kemet seeded China, Asia, Japan that way, all along the side. And so you see, China, the most sacred dance at New Year's is the Lions Dance. I was one of the first black people to ever do the Lions Dance in Chinatown. Talk about it. In the 1971, 72. And the Asians were mad.
I know they were.
They were mad, you know. In fact, they didn't know I was an Asian because you got the stuff on until we got to the end. And it was, I'm like, it's too late. You already cashed the check.
I keep on telling you guys. The hidden history. As the hidden history continues to be unveiled and unmasked, the truth will set us free. Graham Hancock says that we are a species with amnesia. I would say we are a species with amnesia that has been propagandized. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love. Hello there, I'm Kios, Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Ronin Art and Music,